I learned it from Pastor Wendell. He said, and it just hit me, the kingdom of God is a kingdom of friends. And I was like, yes.
We say the message doesn't change, the method does. And I don't necessarily think our method's changing, but I think sometimes we need to just look at the method in a fresh way with people in the room to just inspire, right? Encourage you and remind you of the mission.
Welcome back, everybody. On this episode, I have the privilege of sitting down with Tim Sheridan and Vivi Cassis, who are part of the church planting initiative of the Christian Reformed Church. We spend quite a bit of time talking about our hopes and dreams for this upcoming conference we're having in Port St. Lucie. And we get to hear a little bit about what Resonate Global Missions does in the area of church planting. And maybe there are some people out there who even want to become church planters. And we talk a little bit about what that might look like as well. So thanks for joining us. Let's get started.
The future is now.
All right, welcome everybody back to the Disciple Standard podcast. We're glad that you're joining us. Today, I have two new guests. First time on the podcast, sitting right beside me is Tim Sheridan. And I'll probably get your title wrong, but more or less, he is in charge of church planting for our denomination. Are you called the director, or what are you called?
Director of Church Planting, that's right.
Director of Church Planting, okay. And then sitting next to Tim is Vivi Cassis, who, friends for a long time. She and her husband have planted a church in Pembroke Pines, the Source Church. We had Chris on the podcast maybe a month ago or so. And Vivi does a lot of things. She's our class's stated clerk. She, I think, practically runs the Source Church in terms of administration, keeping everything going. And she works for Tim and our denomination on the Church Planting Core Initiative. I definitely don't know what your title is. I think it's like Director of Operations or something like this.
Not director, but operations manager.
Operations manager. So now we can have a discussion about whether manager or director, which one,
Yeah.
how does that fit? But you work for Tim, and I think serve as almost his right hand. I don't know. I'm probably speaking out of term. You can tell me what Vivi does for you, but I'm glad you guys have both joined the podcast. And kind of the reason that we want to have Tim and Vivi on the podcast is, as many of you know, we're working toward a church planting conference here in Port St. Lucie for our classis, and we're inviting everyone from the denomination to come. And we want to have a discussion about the future of our denomination, particularly with regard to church planting. And those of you who are following this closely, you know that at our denominational synod this last summer, we ended up having a big conversation about church planting. And Tim and Vivi know a lot about that, so maybe we can get into that and talk some about the denomination as a whole. But we're mostly getting ready for this conference. Our classis is partnering with Resonate Global Missions, particularly in their church planting department. So I'm doing a lot of work right now with Tim and with Vivi as we make our preparations. And anyway, welcome.
Thanks. Great to be here.
All right. I'd like to just help our audience know a little bit more about each of you. So why don't we start by just having you tell your story. Tim, who are you, and how did you become a director of church planting for a denomination like the Christian Reformed Church? So it's just open-ended.
Right. Huge question. That's great. Yeah. So my name is Tim Sheridan. I live outside of Vancouver, British Columbia in Western Canada. I'm there because that was previously where I served, Maple Ridge Christian Reformed Church, a local church, before stepping into this role about 3.5 years ago. Married to Andrea, have 4 children, have a son-in-law and a grandson. So this is a whole new chapter of life that we are absolutely enjoying as grandparents. And we've just found out we have a second grandchild on the way.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, I've served in ministry really since the late 90s, early 2000s, first in the Presbyterian Church of America. And my ministry journey started out part of Harbor Presbyterian Church, a multi-site church planting movement in San Diego, California. And I've been serving now in the Christian Reformed Church. It was around 2004 that our family immigrated to Canada, and I entered ministry in the Christian Reformed Church. In addition to being a pastor and now director of church planning, I'm also involved and have been for a number of years in theological education, training pastors and other leaders, both in Phoenix and also in Chile, South America.
Okay, that's great. Now, let me just follow up with you.
Sure.
What does a director of church planting do, like in a day-to-day way?
Yeah, that's great. So one image we use is if you think about what a denominational agency or even a network is trying to steward in church planting, is they're trying to develop and steward a healthy ecosystem. Like, what's the ecosystem in which churches can get planted and be nourished and flourish and grow and multiply? And so we do that for the Christian Reformed Church through Resonate Global Mission. We work with our regional staff that's dispersed across North America as they get involved relationally and walk with potential planters who are discerning a call, walk with churches who are exploring church planting, walk with classis who are excited to get involved in church planting. And we also create a lot of the structures and systems that we believe support church planting to have this ecosystem. Vivi plays a huge role in that. As we design and co-create those systems, Vivi takes the lead on operationalizing them and executing them. So, for example, we believe it's really essential that someone who's thinking about planting goes through a very robust, holistic assessment process, where they sit with a group of people that listen to their story, their sense of call. They sit with this psychologist and just kind of explore some of their own mental health, and they look over their financial health and their relational patterns. And as someone once said, you don't just plant a church in your head. So if you're thinking about church planting, are you already making disciples, engage in evangelism? Are you already doing the work of a church planter? And so that's just one example of one of the systems we set up. We lead that, and we do that in partnership with Stadia Church Planning and a few other partners as well that we work with.
Okay, that's great. Let's find out about Vivi a little bit. Vivi, who are you? And maybe just say a little bit about you and Chris planting the Source Church, and how'd you get involved working for our denomination in church planting?
Okay, well, I think my heart's always been in mission and in ministry and doing the work of the Lord. I was adopted into a pastoral family, born and raised practically into their family, and really lived a very conservative lifestyle when it came into a pastoral bubble. So I just always wanted to go somewhere into ministry. My husband pastored his first call in Holland, Michigan, and that was a great training ground for us. Still love the people, but we always felt that call to something different. And my husband has an evangelistic heart, right? So for some reason, the Lord continued to just pull our hearts to South Florida, and we came. It was 2013. We moved our children down here and just completely stripped everything that we knew.
Yeah.
So we stripped everything. We started homeschooling, which we never thought we would do. So I took a leave from working full time. I worked for Faith Alive Christian Resources at the time.
Yeah.
Right before World Missions and Home Missions went through the restructure process. So we started planting through that end of Home Missions into the in-between before Resonate. So we moved down here, and we've done 12 years so far, going strong. The Lord has been so good at the Source Church. So that's what we do.
I was just saying this to Tim when we were at lunch, but I definitely think it's true. And it may say more about how few people I know than anything else. I'm not sure. But I think that you and Chris are like I don't know what I'd call like the pinnacle or the best at planting churches. Of all the church planters I've ever met and known, you guys like one of the things that has amazed me, I can remember when you were first moving down here, and I was sort of nervous about you guys because I was like, there's so many obstacles that are standing in your way. And I think you were parachute dropping into, I won't list all the reasons, but I was like, man, they're facing a lot of obstacles. And as I've watched on, you guys never let any of those obstacles knock you off of this sort of purpose that you had and the calling that you had. And not only that, but I think you guys really have had a heart for disciple making and for raising up leadership. And I'm amazed at what the Source Church is doing, the kind of community you have there, and the vital ministry that you have. And you guys keep on persisting in all kinds of ways that just I think is really impressive. What has been the hardest thing about church planting?
Besides the physical obstacles of church planting, resources, right? But I think it's keeping the vision and the mission to fuel you every day, because sometimes you can wake up and say, we can do ministry in so many easier ways than this.
Yeah.
But just feeling that strong call to the lost and to the community that you're in, and just keeping that in the forefront, I think, honestly, is just recasting vision to yourself.
Yeah.
So that you can cast vision to those who you're shepherding and leading.
And this is all observations on my part. I don't know whether you'll agree or think they're true or not, but they're my observations. And part of my observation is that you and Chris both have a really personal ministry in the sense that you guys really work at fostering relationships. The Source Church to me is just full of a family of friends, and clearly that's coming from you guys as a way of starting. And then the second thing, I wonder how you respond to this. I see you as like the conscience of the ministry. Like, if things aren't going well, you will make it known that you disapprove.
Correct. 100%. Correct.
And my way of looking at that is that you've played kind of a vital role in the sense that, you know, you talk about keeping a church on its mission or keeping the vision in front. To me, you're like a big part of the standard bearer of like, this is where we're going. No, not that.
Absolutely. No, yeah. Integrity is huge for me. And I just value that so high that the mission is the goal and we're not going to move away from that.
Okay. So. And I think that's awesome. Now, I also view you as a person who can be extremely busy. You're wearing a lot of hats. Why are you working for our denomination in the area of church planting, and what do you do?
I actually think about that often because of the busyness. And I always get pulled back to, again, the calling. I feel a very strong call to church planting, period. I believe in the bubbling up of mission in a local community. I don't think we can ever have too many church plants. I believe in mobilizing leaders. I believe in developing and equipping people. And I'm just privileged and honored to have a little bite-sized piece of that for our entire denomination.
Okay.
So calling.
Yeah, that's great. Now, I'm not sure which of the two of you I'm asking. Maybe I'm asking both of you as I ask this next question. But what's the state of church planting in our denomination right now? And some of our listeners who've been kind of following along, they realize that that our denomination is going through some kind of transitions. We've had some financial challenges that have resulted in not being able to have grant funding available through the denomination and through Resonate for church planting. So, as you think about your roles for the denomination, maybe you can just describe a little bit about what is the current thinking, what's the current vision? how are you taking all that in?
Yeah, I'll start off. You can add whatever you want to add, Vivi. Yeah, so on the one hand, I would say we're experiencing and have been now in the 3 years I've been in the role, a tremendous growth of church planting. And that growth has largely been outside the kind of dominant culture of historically of our denomination. Leaders who have come into North America from all parts of the world, quite frankly. One of the things we do on an annual basis is we host and lead an annual gathering of our church planters. We invite spouses to attend as well. And we're seeing upwards of a dozen languages that are being accessed through translation services that we provide. Yeah, so people who are coming and excited about the Christian Reformed Church, wanting to belong to the Christian Reformed Church, wanting to plant churches with the Christian Reformed Church. Yeah. So we're seeing growth in that area, and it's been significant. I think I think honestly, we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg of the potential that's there. The church around the world is so vibrant and strong, and stories are reaching even the far corners of the earth about what's going on in North America and concern. And so more and more churches and leaders are showing up here wanting to bring renewal, wanting to bring the gospel, wanting to plant churches. Super excited to be part of that. And we also have noticed a denomination that has been engaged in lots of other conversations besides mission, besides church planning. And we've weathered some conflict, obviously. We're all aware of that. And that as a result, the giving towards denominational ministries is declining, and we're trying to navigate that reality while we see a huge opportunity and huge growth possibilities. There's a bit of what I see in terms of the vision that we have because of our deeply rooted belief in the gospel and the confession that Jesus is Lord of all of life. Our heart is to see this gospel, this good news, saturate the whole of society. And for us, we'll know we're at a place of gospel saturation when every man, woman, and child has repeated opportunities to encounter a community that's living on mission and putting the gospel on display. And so we're committed to that. We're committed to seeing the good news of Jesus saturate North America. And we think church planting is one of the primary ways that's going to happen. What would you add, Vivi?
I would just add that I'm very excited to see how the Spirit's at work in church planting, and I think we're at the tipping point. I think there's so much that the Spirit's doing at this time. I recently was in May, we got to visit with a few church plants in Detroit and got to just really get vision of what the Lord's doing in that city. And I know that he's working in so many different places. So I think we're at a point where we're dreaming, and I think this may be the start to multiplying church plants.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I guess I would say this for myself, which is somehow or another, I just started feeling a calling toward jumping into this, jumping into sort of a broader conversation. I think we've been here at Sunlight, we've really been excited about planting churches. That's part of who I think we are, what our identity is. I think multiplication is something that is just a big deal to us here. I think we're always thinking about how to multiply disciples and multiplying leaders, and we want to keep on planting churches. But I don't know, somewhere along the line, I've started to feel some kind of tug or call into, getting this conversation going at a broader level across our denomination. So, I guess my way of putting it is beyond just kind of what I'm concentrated on here locally. I'm also kind of picking my head up to see, like, okay, what else is out there, and how can we give and participate? And I guess, somewhere along the line, especially after Synod, I just started thinking to myself, okay, I really think that local churches have to get engaged, that the way a denomination works, it actually has to be all the local churches working together. You can't have like some central office or agency coming up with ideas and the churches being completely disengaged from it. Nothing's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, we started this idea of having this conference where we're inviting people to come. Tim, I think it's so good that Resonate's church planting arm is getting so heavily invested in this conference and working with us. Why should people come to this conference?
Yeah, it's a great question. And Scott, we're just so thankful for the partnership. We think it's a moment of significant opportunity. I almost feel like it's an inflection point for our denomination right now. And so I think you should come to this conference to catch a vision for what is possible for the CRC. Our deep conviction, we were just talking about this morning, is that our present reality in which we are experiencing decline is not inevitable. Mm-hmm. In fact, it doesn't need to dictate our future. In fact, this is an opportunity to be renewed in the gospel and to come back to really the core of our gospel identity, to rekindle our hope for the gospel, the hope that the gospel is good news for the world and that the church is good news for the world. And so our hope would be that many would come from across North America to come and to have this hope rekindled, to be renewed in our identity, and to gather around this growing shared vision to multiply disciples, to develop leaders, and to plant more and more churches into the future.
Let's just say there's somebody out there, they're thinking, oh, that's interesting, I might like to come. What's going to happen at the conference? Maybe you could just say a little bit. We've been spending the morning sort of talking that over, but just give a little preview of what you think will happen. What will happen? Why will people be there? What will they experience? That kind of thing.
Yeah, so people are going to come to the conference. I kind of alluded to it already, but we are going to come together to gather around God's word and opportunities for worship and fellowship together, times of learning and vision casting, and it's really going to be centered around being renewed in this gospel identity, hearing the invitation and call to make disciples. This is really the core of our identity, and to cast a vision for what we believe is possible if the Spirit of God were to move in the Christian Reformed Church, to bring this kind of gospel renewal, to rekindle our hope for multiplication. And so we want to inspire those who come. We want to dig in and look at some best practices and some tools and resources that we could take back into our context, and also have a clear opportunity to speak into and help shape what synods ask for, a denominational wide church planning strategy for the next decade. And so we're going to have opportunities as well for people to hear our thinking on that. Is that starting to take shape, to speak into that and to help shape what that could look like?
Vivi, any thoughts?
He said.
What he said? Okay.
No, I think it's going to be important to just also sit in a room with like-minded people, because we say the message doesn't change, the method does. And I don't necessarily think our method's changing, but I think sometimes we need to just look at the method in a fresh way with people in the room to just inspire, right? Encourage you and remind you of the mission, right? And our mission is to make disciples, multiply disciples, right? And develop leaders. And how can we as a denomination come together and create a vision and a strategy, not just a vision, but how are we going to get there, right? Let's come up with the vehicle and let's work together. So that's what I hope to come out of that conference.
Yeah, and something, Vivi, that you mentioned just triggered another thought. Like, if we're going to lean into this future together, and if we're going to see what we think is possible, it's going to really be built around a strong relational network of a term I picked up from some of my friends at the New Thing Network. They talk about friends on mission.
Okay.
So we need to find friends on mission. We need to be friends on mission together. And I think especially after all that we've weathered as a denomination, it's really an important season to rekindle friendship, to discover friendship, and to find ways to develop what we hope would be a vibrant movement across our denomination of friends on mission together.
Yeah, I really like that. I have this little phrase that I like to use. I think I first learned it in the context of our Brazilian campus.
Yeah.
I learned it from Pastor Wendell. He said, and it just hit me, the kingdom of God is a kingdom of friends. And I was like, yes, that is so true. And sometimes I think about it. If I think just for myself, almost everything that if I was like, man, then God did this in my life, and then I saw him do this, it all kind of started with friendship. And I think one of the unique things about this conference is actually that, we don't have any money. So we can't help anyone to come. And you can see that as a flaw, but I think it's sort of a feature because everyone who's going to be here is going to have to kind of give to the movement rather than just soak it in or take from it. Everyone's going to have to give something to be here, so to speak. And I think that in addition to just showing up, we're kind of coming to give friendship to each other. And then we'll just wonder together about what God can do. And I think maybe we'll be surprised at what happens as a result of people meeting each other, talking things through. But one of the things I kind of like about it, there are denominational gatherings like a synod or maybe some other gatherings that are more formal or about business. But this really is going to be an opportunity to just sit back and dream about the future together, which I think could also be very interesting. I don't think there's too many spaces in our denomination like this. I think this conference will be kind of like a first of its kind, and I'm hoping maybe a turning point where, you know, we develop these friendships, we see that we're doing something together, and we keep on being willing to give to this because we wonder what God could do out of it. I don't know. Do you have any more thoughts about that? Resonate often, I'm sure, you know, gathers people in because you have some resources and you invite them to a conference and you pay for things. Now, everyone has to kind of pay their own way to get here. Yeah,
that's right. You know, I think at one point we imagined that what might come of this is a coalition of the willing, right? So that's a good thing. I agree with you. And I also, I think it's, I mean, I would go so far to say, you know, we're trying to open up space to dream and have honest and robust conversations about the things that at the end of the day are really like essential and vital and foundational to our future.
Yeah.
You know, again, like the gospel, our identity in the gospel, being renewed with not only that identity, but with a robust, vibrant hope that this is good news for the world. This call to make disciples and multiply leaders and churches. Like, I mean, these are, I think sometimes we have conversations that are not about these things that are really essential and at the core. And so I'm excited about coming back to the center, coming back to the core, having the conversations that really matter.
Yeah. I also think that we all have thoughts on what we think of church planting, how we think church planting should go. And I think we're also trying to create a space that we welcome diverse thoughts, right? We want to enter into those conversations. We don't want this to be just a one-sided, we think this is the way of the future, but let's have a conversation. Let's wrestle through that together and let's see where the Lord leads. You know, I don't think we're saying only one size fits all, right? I think we invite it, we welcome it, and we invite it.
Yeah, and Scott, you said, you know, you mentioned something a couple minutes ago. I think it's also part, I want to just draw it again and pull on that thread is, you know, it's this movement is going to require churches. Churches and classes coming together in ways that we really haven't in the past. And there's a place for denominational agencies like Resonate. We're really delighted to be partnering in this conversation. But I think as we imagine the future, I think that we all need to also imagine maybe a bit of a different future together. And there's been, you could look back on the history of home missions and you can find this interesting conversation. Well, who plants churches? Does the denomination plant churches? Do churches plant churches? Do classes plant churches? And I don't want to get lost in all that. We were joking about some of that story earlier today, but this is a moment where I think we need to really come back to the central role that churches and classes play in this movement. And I think that's an important piece of this.
Okay, that's good. Now, I have a different kind of question, but I think you guys are the right people to ask this question to. If you think about just across our denomination, and you'll have a good view of this as you think about all the church plants and everything, what are some of the things that you would say are cutting edge or most innovative or things we should be paying attention to?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think some of what comes to mind, I'm curious, I'll just jump in, Vivi.
Go ahead.
I think some of the interesting things to notice is there are places, and in fact, where we're at today, like Sunlight, not only Sunlight Church, but this whole Southern Florida region. But there are other places like Tucson, Arizona, Houston, Texas, places where the Spirit is really moving, and there's a movement of discipleship and leadership development and multiplication that's taking place. And I think that's something I think we should pay attention to, because what we see in that is, I think we see a variety of models being employed, a variety of methods being employed, many of which are bearing fruit in different ways. And we also see some of the, I'll take Houston for an example. There's so much church planting happening in the greater Houston area that it's also forcing us to kind of rethink some of our classical boundaries. Houston, Texas falls within Classis Rocky Mountain. Classis Rocky Mountain is a huge classis geographically. And Classis Rocky Mountain's having to innovate. How do we support so much church planting in one region? And so some folks, I've heard some folks wonder, is it time to think about a Texas classis?
Okay.
Like a Lone Star classis, I think is the name that's been floated. But, so where we see these pockets of multiplication, like I think it's something interesting to pay attention to. And I think the third thing is, and I'll just highlight, I think for the sake of this context, one example, but trust me in that if we had time, we could multiply the examples. And the example narrates this story of diaspora movement into North America and the incredible opportunity that lives, I think, for church planting. And I'm thinking of the Indo-Pak diaspora. Punjabi-speaking communities, one of the largest Indo-Pak diasporas in Central California in the United States side. And on the Canadian side, kind of the Brampton area in Ontario, and also the Lower Mainland where I'm from. Okay. And what we've seen in recent years in the Southern California context is fairly quickly 3 church plants start up, reaching people in the Indo-Pak diaspora. And with potential, honestly, for dozens and dozens of more church plants to emerge. And it's just one case study, and I think there's many that we could look at. We could look at the opportunity among Chinese immigrants. We talked about that briefly as well. We're in many ways, the story in Houston is one of the Venezuelan diaspora. And so, like I said, I don't want to get into all the weeds of all those stories, but there's these fascinating stories. Let me
flesh it out just for people who are hearing and they may not know. All right, you think about this term diaspora. I think what you're really meaning is something like people who are moving to the United States from various different regions of the world.
Yep.
And they find themselves here, and there's a heart for church planting. And so what's happening somehow is they're getting connected to the Christian Reformed Church.
Yep.
They see something vital with, our articulation of the gospel, our world and life view.
Our polity. I sometimes hear that, our polity.
All right, our church polity.
I mean, that surprises me, if
yeah.
I could be honest, but hey, others find.
But there's something that is attractive, and they say, we want to plant churches.
Yeah.
And now the Christian Reformed Church, through Resonate and otherwise, is coming alongside of them and helping them to plant churches. And this is starting to take off and multiply. I think that's kind of the basic idea.
Yeah.
Now, if people are moving from other places, they find themselves here in the United States or Canada, what are the biggest challenges they face when it comes to planting churches?
Yeah, that's a huge question. Some of the challenges are navigating our communities, right? So finding friendship, finding fellowship through other churches, through other classes. But I would say that, we have, again, stories where that's going really, really well, where classes are stepping up, showing tremendous hospitality, friendship. Others, I think, are struggling with how to do that. So that's a challenge we've identified. We've seen that. We're trying to navigate through that. There's a grassroots initiative that's kind of sprung up, and it's looking for the kinds of people that would kind of be open the door and be gatekeepers. We're looking for someone in each classes, actually.
Yeah, okay.
That would be a person like that would advocate for the newcomer and for those who are trying to navigate all the ways we do church, right? And the way we gather together. There's financial challenges,
Yeah.
right? So, and those are, that's been one of the most painful things for me in the last year is the decisions that got made about eliminating direct grants to church planters through Resonate, impacted these planters the most. And some of those stories were shared from the Forest Synod.
Yeah.
Some of those planters were delegated, which I was thankful to see. But that's a huge challenge. And I just got news before I made my way here, so encouraged by this. The classis in the Central Plains said, hey, we have some money dedicated to church planting. We're not seeing anything moving right now. We hear about the need in Houston. We want to support what God's doing in Houston. And I was so encouraged by that.
Wow, that's great.
That commitment that classis made to another classis, another region. And I think also, some of the listeners might find this an interesting take, but like I did immigrate to Canada from the United States.
Yeah.
And on the surface, they appear to be similar kind of countries. Once you live in Canada for a while, you actually realize culturally it's a very different place. But that's just a fraction. So I just have a little bit of a taste of what many of these leaders have. Like they're coming to a whole new culture.
Right.
And sure, there's a language barrier, there's a cultural barrier. Some of what I hear from them, which I love, is their honesty. Like, hey, do you guys believe the gospel? What I hear, and I was like, well, what do you mean by that? And they'll point out something that kind of rubs them a bit wrong, and it's just this opportunity to be renewed. Like they see the ways that we kind of swim with the culture sometimes.
Yeah.
And so I think there's just huge hope for our own spiritual renewal through these kind of relational opportunities. But also, I was recently speaking at an event in BC on the weekend, and some leaders from some of these communities, just pulled me aside and said, that was so helpful. I was talking about some of the cultural landscape in Canada. As a newcomer, I was articulating things that they were just running up against, but they couldn't understand it. They didn't have the historical context, like what's going on in Canada right now. And also I would imagine for the United States. So it's, they're not coming into a static culture. They're coming into a foreign culture. And I think in both of our countries, a culture that's shifting tremendously right now, and how to make sense of this, how to find their identity. And, so I don't know, those are challenges I would highlight. What would you say, Vivi? Would you add anything to that?
Not to challenges. I would say maybe to cutting edge.
Yep.
Back to that question. I can speak more to my local region, but I'm seeing a fire coming out of the Gen Z, the young adult. That whole generation. I think that our local churches, our classes, and our denomination needs to prepare itself to resource and equip and support these guys and gals that are ready to be on mission. I get challenged on a daily basis by their faith and their conviction, and their just fuel for the fire, for the gospel. So I believe that we have to be prepared as a denomination to really like hand over that torch.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, that's really good. Coming back to what you were talking about, Tim, I personally get really excited about this. So we've experienced this in Sunlight across our campuses now. There are 4 primary languages that we're worshiping in. So English, Spanish, Portuguese, and Korean. And what I think, as I think about it, I think, okay, this is a vision for the future because pretty much every church that has a physical location could potentially open its doors and help a church get planted that maybe speaks a different language, has a different cultural background. And I think one of the things that the gospel does is just cuts across other barriers that might otherwise be there. So oftentimes what ends up happening is people segment themselves out, but it seems to me that the gospel brings people together. So one of the things I think about as I think about our denomination as a whole is, man, what if every single one of our churches ended up, becoming host to another congregation inside of its church that had a different primary language? And I think, oh man, that could really be something. And there's probably opportunity abounding everywhere you look. Anyway, I just, from our experience here at Sunlight, it comes with challenges. I think we're facing those challenges as we just think about our congregations. Often people can't speak to each other because we need some kind of need of translation. But I think we live in like the most awesome time where like there's technology that's breaking down this barrier too, where we can understand each other even though we're not speaking the same language without the need of another human translator even. So I think that's cool. Anyway, I want to kind of turn the conversation just a little bit to some other things. So as we're thinking about this conference, we're starting to think about, we're just tossing around ideas as to some goals or metrics that we can set for vision for the future. So we've been tossing around this idea, and I don't know these are the numbers that are going to stick, but what if in the next 10 years, all our classes work together and we challenge each other to try to raise up 2,000 leaders? And what that would mean is that in all of our various classes that we have around North America, United States, and Canada, that would probably be about 40, 45 examinations, licensure examinations, commission pastor, minister of the word examinations that we would wind up having, which would be something totally different. And if that were to happen, I think our educational institutions like our seminary, and there'd just be a lot of great things that happen. Right now, our denomination doesn't have enough leaders. We have lots of churches. There are no pastors. And I think it's like a new day to think about this kind of thing. The other goal that we're setting, and again, I think we're just brainstorming, tossing around numbers, but there's about 1,000 congregations in the Christian Reformed Church. What if we were to set the goal that in 10 years we'll plant 1,000 more churches, so that more or less, as it works itself out, every church will plant a church. We know not every church may plant a church. Some may plant 2 or 3. There may be other ways of coming at it, but, this would be something unprecedented, I think, for us. But although these goals maybe are ambitious, they also seem possible or doable. I just wonder what you guys think with regard to having some goals like this. Is it good to have some numerical goals around leadership, around church planting? What if we don't hit it? What if we surpass it? Who are we to know what's going to happen in 10 years? All those kind of thoughts. What's your thinking? We're just brainstorming at this point.
Why don't you go first this time, Vivi?
Sure. I think that if there's no vision, people perish, right? And I think it's healthy, even if we believe that it's an unreachable goal, to strive, because even if we don't meet it, we'll have the ball closer to the goal,
okay,
to the finish line. So we'll be that much better for it.
So you're saying if we set the goal to plant 1,000 churches but only hit 800,
I think it's still a win,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
So if we say, let's just plant churches and we'll see how we get there, we probably won't even get 500, right?
Right.
So I'm 100% on board with metrics, with measurements, with accountability, and with constant conversation and challenging and championing, right? Have people champion it. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. We need to set aspirational goals, and we need to get really specific, concrete about that. And I think I guess my own thinking is those numbers are kind of striking a chord with me as well. And I feel like they land somewhere in the middle of like, yeah, this is probably possible.
Okay.
But also, like, I hope they just do what, regardless of the numbers. I mean, if it's the numbers that are required to get us there, then let the numbers drive us to our hands and knees. But one of the things you'll hear strongly from Resonate as we share this emerging 10-year strategy is, and we're already starting to leak this out through fall classis meetings, we're really wanting to issue a call to prayer and a call to fasting.
Yeah.
You really can't find, throughout the history of Christianity, you really can't find a renewal movement that took place where there wasn't a movement of prayer and often fasting. My friends on Mission, we used that term earlier. My friends on mission at the Kansas City Underground Network, they talk about extraordinary prayer. And what they mean by that is like, okay, so what's your ordinary prayer? Maybe your ordinary prayer is you pray a short prayer 3 times a day before you consume some food. Extraordinary prayer would be pray a 4th time, or pray longer. Like, in other words, we might hear a call to extraordinary prayer and fasting and say, well, that's not for me. Like, are you saying I got to pray for a couple hours a day? Or, I mean, it'd be great, honestly, if some people really felt the call to dedicate extended time to prayer. But really, it's a call to like, what's your ordinary prayer life? Start there. What would be extraordinary in this season? How could you pray more with more fervor and intentionality? Because this does kind of put us in this place of like, God, unless you show up, unless this isn't going to happen. God, if you don't go with us, we don't want to go. And that's kind of how I think about this as well. So it's like, Lord, we think given all that you've given us, and can we just say that the Lord has given this tradition so many resources, a rich understanding of the gospel and opening up the biblical story, lots of generosity, lots of financial blessing. Like there's so much here. God, given what you've trusted us with, we think this is realistic, but God, you're going to have to show up. You're going to have to change hearts. You're going to have to revive us for this to happen. So that's kind of where I think about it. I think we got to have a number, and it's got to stretch us. It's got to get us to the end of ourselves, because at the end of ourselves is where God, I think, does his best work often.
Amen.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I think as people come to this conference, we're probably going to wind up having conversations about this. And part of it is, I think, if we're going to have numbers like we just talked about, that every region of our denomination, every classis is going to have to kind of buy in to like, here's what we'll do. This is our part in this. And it's hard to know. I think my experience being in this denomination is that we haven't had enough of, or even much at all, of like classes interacting with each other this way. Like, all right, we're all going to do this together. What can you contribute? What can I contribute? I don't think we've ever tried to talk with each other like this. And I'm kind of wondering how that's going to go. Like, if we all get this grand vision together and then everybody's got to go back and say, okay, like, what's our part in this? And we've never really experienced that. At least I haven't, as long as I've been in this denomination. I'm kind of eager about that. I wonder if you guys have any thoughts. Tim, you probably interact with classes a lot more than I would, just various different classes. You see the variation, you see the different needs. I wonder if you have any words of wisdom or thoughts that might help us prepare to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm with you, Scott. Like I'm eager. I'm so eager to see how this plays out because this is vital to the future. Like, and that's why I was so heartened by this email I alluded to earlier. Because what I see in that, and I guess what my hope is, again, like going back to this richness of our tradition, we have this understanding of covenant. We walk in covenant with one another, right, and before God. And so I think this is a huge opportunity as a denomination to renew our covenant with one another. We're going to walk together. I love Paul's image as well. Like, wouldn't it be great if every part of the body called the CRC says we can't exist without this other body, part of the body doing its part. And if one part suffers, we all suffer together. And I think, in some ways, our covenant together got tested in the last 5 years. In terms of the theological commitments we make to one another and commit to operate within those. And I hope this takes us in a whole deeper level to covenant together on mission. Like, what an opportunity that's before us. And so I'm hopeful, I'm curious. I hope, and I just know that given what I've seen, this is going to be a critical part of the future.
Okay.
Like we all hands on deck. We all have a part to play. And I hope in that, last thing I'll say is that we do that in a way that regardless of what classes you come from, what size your church is, what's going on in your community, that you can say, look, I'm part of this broader vision. We take away any element of shame. There's nothing to be ashamed of. We're in this together. And, sometimes I know as a church planner in my own history, you can compare the size of your church and the small church person or medium-sized church person feels insecure or ashamed by that. Like, let's move past all that with our churches and classes and say, like, what can we do together?
Yeah.
And I think, so I just think it's a ripe opportunity to change that narrative.
Yeah, that's good. Now, just this is another thought, because I can, just piggybacking off what you said, I can imagine that there's some church leaders, pastors, whoever who might be listening in, and maybe they're pastoring in an isolated place. They could even be excited that our denomination's talking more about church planting and missions and multiplication overall, but maybe they don't really have any training in this or don't have any experience in it and wouldn't know how to get connected in church planting whatsoever. And maybe they'd be shy to come to something like this because they'd say, oh man, what's my part in this? You have any thoughts? Either of you?
Yeah, I'd want to say clearly to those pastors and leaders, like we are part of this family of churches together. And I think if we're all honest with each other, we've been that way this morning. Like, none of us have it all figured out. We all desperately need Jesus. Yep. We all desperately need one another. And I think it's that security we have in the gospel, right? Because the gospel tells us, like, we are more loved and cherished by God than we will ever be able to fathom. Our hearts just can't wrap themselves around how loved we are by God. And so that identity gives us security.
Yeah.
Say, hey, I want to be part of this, and I might have a small part to play. And even look at the stories, like I think of the story of Jesus, like the widow who comes and just gives a small offering. Jesus takes the moment to kind of draw attention to her and say, notice what she did.
Right.
Right. And so I would say to any leader, like, bring whatever is in your hand. We all have something in our hand.
Yeah.
Let's show up with that together.
I kind of think I have more personal story or interaction with this because the church I grew up in when I was in high school was a small Christian Reformed church. I doubt there was ever more than 60, 65 people on a Sunday morning. Very isolated, very unhealthy. Our church was always fighting, and there was tension, and people are at odds with each other. And after I graduated from high school, went away to college, it didn't take too long. There was a group of us all about the same age that were kind of in the youth group together. And when we all graduated high school and left, and the church just wound up kind of closing down. And yeah, I'm thinking about a church like that, which, yeah, I've been in more churches like that than I have been in churches that are like Sunlight, that might be a little bit larger or have more resources or more people. I've been in most of my life in smaller churches, and I think about that sometime, which is our little Christian Reformed church. I'm not sure anyone would have been able to wrap their mind around, like, okay, we're going to plant the daughter church. I just don't think our church was thinking that kind of thing. But I think that there were, well, not I think, there were a couple people who, I don't even know why they did it, decided to take me aside and try to pour into me. And I think, okay, whatever success I have in ministry has to be the story of the success of Trinity Christian Reformed Church. You know, that has to be part of the story of their success. So I always think to myself, it doesn't matter how small, how dysfunctional, how remote, how whatever, you can really have some role you play in the kingdom of God. And I'm just thankful to this small, little dysfunctional church. I think about that all the time.
Yeah, who knows, like, what other future church planners are out there, right?
Yes.
Throughout North America and in a number of churches that might identify with being in a similar place. And it's, yeah, it takes people seeing that person, pouring into them, taking on that call to one-on-one discipleship. And yeah, any church can invest in that. In fact, I think all churches are as part of being the church. Like, that's what it means to be the church together. We're committed to that shared mission to make disciples from one generation to the next. And, you know, we haven't brought this up yet today in the conversation here. We talked about it earlier, like, and Vivi alluded to it, like the younger generation and the amount of like confusion and just, I put it this way recently, thinking about Canadian culture, the gods of our culture, they're failing us. And the culture is starting to crumble, and we can see that. And it creates angst, and it also creates this deep hunger. And so I think, you know, every church is part of that reality, because even the most so-called isolated church in a remote part of North America is filled with families,
right,
who have children and young adult children eventually, and who are saturated in all the same media narratives that are, you know, we see all around us, and are asking deep questions about the future. And I think it's just a huge opportunity, God to do something new in our denomination, and for us to step up with greater intentionality to this call to make disciples. No one gets a pass on that call, no matter what size the church.
Yeah. Let me ask one more question.
Yeah.
Then we'll tie it up, put a bow on it. Let's just say there's somebody watching, and, well, here, let me step back. I'll just my own story here. I don't really think I heard about church planting until after I was a pastor here at Sunlight. Like, the idea of church planting, the idea was like out there. It wasn't like I'd never heard of it, but it certainly wasn't anything that I had any interest in or I thought I had any role in. It was just, yeah, I never knew much about it. I never heard much about it. And anyway, then that all changed. And somewhere along the line, I started thinking about church planting. And now I've become like super passionate as a Christian leader. Man, let's plant churches. Yeah. I'm super passionate about it. But let's just say there's somebody out there and they're just having the first like stirrings about planting a church. They may not know a lot about it. They'd like to learn more, but maybe they even they could be listening to this podcast and just sense a little something in the back of their heart like, oh, maybe I'm hearing God's voice somehow. If someone was starting to think about church planting, who should they talk to? What should they do next? What resources are out there? How would they get connected with you guys? All those kinds of things.
Yeah, if someone's in that kind of boat, we would love to connect. They can reach us through the Resonate Global Mission website, church planning, and we love to have a conversation. We love to see if we are connected to not only our own regional staff that's distributed across North America, but other staff, other denominational leaders, other churches. We love to make those connections. We love to walk alongside and help discern a call. We even have a couple places now in North America where we're piloting some church planning internships and residency programs.
Okay. Like where? Where can people go?
Yeah, people could go to Tucson and experience that kind of immersive experience. People could go to Nebraska as well. F Street Church is running one of those. So, and we're looking to multiply those. So there's places that they could come and kind of dip their toe in the water, like and do ministry, do life with a more experienced church planner and discern if this is something for them. And I know because I've been a recent listener of this podcast. I wasn't going to say frequent, but recently frequent.
Recently frequent. That's good.
Yeah, that I know that's a topic that's come up already.
Yeah,
that's excited me because I would love to see, multiple opportunities across North America where people like that could come and do life, do ministry with someone with experience and test that out. You know, like you don't know till you try, and you know, as you take a step of obedience. As you sense God's call, it's been my experience in my own life, the life of other leaders I've mentored. As you take that step of obedience, the Spirit shows up and continues to give you the clarity and the courage to take the next step and the step after that. So maybe someone listening like that is going to plant 5 churches in the next.
Yeah, maybe.
Who knows?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I think that would be great. I'm hoping that at our conference we'll have people who, you know, might be discerning that perhaps God's calling them to plant a church. I think that would be great. Anyway, well, everybody, thanks for joining us. I think it's been a great episode, Tim and Vivi. Thank you for being a guest today. We're super excited about the conference. It's going to be in November. The pre-conference starts on the 8th, but then the conference itself starts on the 10th and the 11th, which is a Monday and Tuesday. We're going to have people from all over North America. You might be watching today, and this could be the sign that you need to go and register because you got to be here. You got to be part of this conversation, part of the future. So please make sure to register. We'll put the link for registering for the conference down below the video. Everybody, thanks for joining us. Make sure to like and subscribe. We'll see you next week.
The future is now.